In the entire history of movies, there are only a handful of names that truly stand above the rest. Directors whose work didn't just define a genre, but actually changed the language of film itself. Today, we're talking about one of those giants, Akira Kurosawa. I mean, think about it. When George Lucas, the guy who created Star Wars, says you're one of his biggest inspirations, you know you're not just a big deal, you're a legend. And he's not the only one, not by a long shot. From Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns to Coppola's sweeping epics, Kurosawa's fingerprints are all over modern cinema. So that's the big question, right? Who was this master that inspired the masters themselves? We're going to dive into the story of a man who actually wanted to be a painter, who faced unbelievable tragedy and failure, and somehow rose to become one of the most revered filmmakers of all time. To really get Kurosawa, you first have to wrap your head around the sheer scale of his legacy. He wasn't just a great Japanese director. No, he was a global icon, plain and simple. Just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about the entire 20th century. Of all the incredible artists, writers, and cultural figures across all of Asia, he was named among the very top. That's just, wow. It shows you his importance went way, way beyond just movies. So how did he get there? Well, this is the crazy part. His journey into film was basically an accident. He never, ever set out to become a filmmaker. You've got this fascinating mix of influences that made him who he was. On one hand, he's descended from a samurai family. Talk about tradition. But on the other, his dad was super forward-thinking and actually encouraged all his kids to watch Western movies. Kurosawa's real passion, though, it was painting. That's what he wanted to do. But he struggled, both to make a living and to feel like his art was saying anything meaningful. And this time in his life was also marked by this just crushing personal tragedy. His older brother, Heigo, who he idolized, was a benshi. Now, a benshi was a live narrator for silent films. They were huge stars back then. But when talkies arrived, that whole profession just vanished. And Heigo, feeling his art was obsolete, tragically took his own life. Decades later, Kurosawa titled the chapter about it in his autobiography, A Story I Don't Want to Tell. You could just feel the pain. It was a loss that haunted him forever. So there he is, 25 years old, painting career going nowhere. He sees an ad for assistant directors at a film studio and applies on a whim. The application required an essay on the problems with Japanese films. So he writes this brilliant, kind of sassy essay, basically tearing them apart. And guess what? Director Kajiro Yamamoto reads it, loves the kid's debts, and demands the studio hire him. And boom, just like that, his path was set. And it wasn't easy from the get-go. No way. His very first film as a director comes out in 1943, right in the thick of World War II. And the wartime censors almost banned it. Their reason? It was too Western. The only thing that saved it was the intervention of another film legend, Yasujiro Ozu, who vouched for him. Okay, so after the war, he's really finding his voice, making great films, but he's still mostly a household name in Japan. And then, one film comes along, and this single film changes everything. I mean, this really shows you the before and after. Before 1950, Japanese film was practically invisible in the West. But then, Rashomon happens. This wasn't some big epic. It was a low-budget, complex, experimental movie. And it goes and wins the top prize at the Venice Film Festival. It sent a total shockwave through the film world. Suddenly, everybody wanted a piece of Japanese cinema. This is also when one of the all-time great director-actor partnerships was born. Kurosawa cast a then-unknown actor named Toshiro Mifune in his film Drunken Angel. They clicked instantly and would go on to make 16 films together. Mifune's raw, almost animalistic energy became the signature of Kurosawa's greatest work. And man, what a run it was! From the late 40s to the mid-60s, the guy was just on fire, dropping one masterpiece after another. He was doing things nobody had ever seen before, like using multiple cameras to film action, which is standard now but was revolutionary then. And his influence exploded. Seven Samurai became the Western The Magnificent Seven. Yojimbo became A Fistful of Dollars. And yep, The Hidden Fortress was a huge inspiration for Star Wars. This was his absolute golden age. But after every peak, there can be a valley. And after this incredible streak, Kurosawa's career didn't just slow down, it hit a brick wall. The Japanese film industry was changing, his big-budget style was seen as a risk, and his big shot at Hollywood, well, it ended in total disaster. This was an absolute nightmare. The film was Tora, 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 a a massive co-production with 20th Century Fox. He poured years of his life into it. And then, just 3 weeks into shooting, they fired him. And to make it worse, the studio publicly questioned his mental health, claiming he was suffering from fatigue. It was a devastating public humiliation, and not a single foot of his film was used in the final movie. And from there, things just spiraled. He gets fired in '68. He tries to make a comeback in 1970, but the film flops and his company goes bankrupt. Nobody in Japan would give him money for another movie. His health was failing. By late 1971, he had reached his breaking point and attempted to take his own life. It really seemed like the master's story was over. But it wasn't. In one of the greatest comeback stories in cinema history, Kurosawa's career was about to be saved by the very people he had inspired. And this is where the story comes full circle. A new generation of Hollywood directors, guys like Lucas, Coppola, and Spielberg, basically worshipped Kurosawa. When they heard their hero couldn't get a film made, they were horrified. So they used their newfound power to go to bat for him, convincing American studios to help fund his next projects. And this visual really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have the master at work in his prime. On the other, his most famous student, George Lucas, the man who took inspiration from Kurosawa to create a galaxy far, far away, and then helped resurrect his idol's career. It's an incredible connection. With that new backing, Kurosawa came roaring back. He made Kagemusha, and it won the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival. And then came Ran, his sweeping, tragic version of King Lear. It earns him an Oscar nomination for Best Director, and Kurosawa himself said it was his greatest achievement. What a comeback. In 1990, after all the masterpieces, all the awards, the failure, and the triumphant return, he received a Lifetime Achievement Oscar, and he got up on that stage and said this: "I'm a little worried because I don't feel that I understand cinema yet." Can you believe that? The humility of the man. He was always a student, always pushing, always learning. Just amazing. So what does it take for art to truly change the world? Well, Kurosawa's life gives us a pretty powerful answer. It takes a painter's eye, a samurai's discipline, and the sheer resilience to survive absolute heartbreak and failure. His films weren't just entertainment. They built a bridge between cultures and totally redefined what a movie could be. And that is a legacy that will, without a doubt, endure forever.